Have you ever been in a simple conversation and suddenly your mind goes completely blank? Someone asks you a basic question like, "How was your day?" And instead of answering naturally, you freeze. You start thinking too much. You search for perfect words. You worry about grammar. And in that moment, the conversation moves on without you. This is not because your English is bad. This is because your brain is overloaded. You are trying to perform instead of communicate. And today, we are going to fix that. In this video, I will show you how to master daily English small talk without overthinking, without freezing, and without pressure. You will learn how to speak naturally, how to keep conversations going, and how to feel calm while speaking. Not perfect English, natural English. This is your reset. Chapter 1. Stop trying to be perfect. The biggest mistake you're making is not your grammar, not your vocabulary, and not your accent. The biggest mistake is that you're trying to sound perfect before you allow yourself to speak. This one habit is silently destroying your fluency because it creates pressure in your mind every single time you open your mouth. You are not just speaking, you are performing, and performance always brings fear. You have trained your brain to believe that every sentence must be correct. You believe that if you make a mistake, people will notice immediately, judge you, and think you're not intelligent. This belief is not based on reality. It is based on fear. In real conversations, people are not analyzing your grammar the way you think they are. They are focused on meaning, not structure. They're trying to understand you, not evaluate you. Think about your own behavior when someone speaks to you in broken English. Do you sit there and analyze every mistake they make, or do you simply try to understand what they are saying? Most of the time, you focus on the message. You ignore small errors because they do not matter. Communication is about exchanging ideas, not proving linguistic perfection. The same is true for you, but your mind does not accept this easily because it is addicted to control. Perfection gives you a false sense of control. It makes you feel safe because you believe that if everything is correct, nothing can go wrong. But the reality is the opposite. The more you try to control every word, the more pressure you create, and that pressure blocks your ability to speak. Your brain becomes slow because it is checking grammar, searching for vocabulary, and correcting itself at the same time. This overload leads to freezing. Freezing is not a language problem. It is a mental problem. Your brain is overwhelmed. You are trying to do too many things at once. You are thinking about tense, sentence structure, pronunciation, and how you sound, all while trying to respond in real time. No brain can handle that speed with that level of pressure. So it shuts down, and you go blank. Now understand this clearly. Native speakers do not speak perfectly. This is not an opinion. This is a fact. They make mistakes constantly, but they do not care. They start sentences without knowing how they will end them. They change their words in the middle. They pause, they repeat, they correct themselves, and sometimes they do not even finish their sentences. And still, they communicate clearly because their focus is on meaning, not perfection. Listen carefully to real conversations between native speakers. You will notice hesitation words like and like. You will hear incomplete sentences. You will hear grammar that is technically incorrect. But communication still happens smoothly because both people are relaxed. There's no pressure to sound perfect. There's only a desire to express and understand. You need to adopt this mindset. Your goal is not to impress. Your goal is to express. When you try to impress, you start choosing complicated words and building long sentences that you are not comfortable with. This increases the chance of mistakes and increases your anxiety. When you focus on expressing, you choose simple words that you already know, and your speaking becomes natural and smooth. Simplicity is power in communication. Simple sentences are not a sign of weakness. They are a sign of clarity. If you can say something in a simple way, you are already communicating effectively. Complexity is not necessary for daily conversations. In fact, complexity often creates confusion, both for you and for the listener. Let's break this down with a simple example. Imagine someone asks you, "How was your day?" If you try to be perfect, you might start building a complex sentence in your mind. You might think, "I need to use the correct tense. I need to explain everything clearly. I need to sound natural." While you are thinking all this, time is passing and the moment is gone. Now imagine you remove the need for perfection. You simply say, "It was good, a bit busy. I had a lot of work, but I feel okay." This is simple, clear, and natural. It is not perfect, but it works. And that is what matters. The moment you accept that imperfect speaking is normal, something changes in your brain. The pressure starts to disappear. You stop checking every word before you say it. You allow yourself to speak freely. And when you speak more freely, your fluency improves naturally. Fluency is not built by perfection. It is built by repetition and comfort. Another important point you need to understand is that mistakes are not failures. They are part of the learning process. Every mistake you make is giving you feedback. It is showing you what you need to improve. If you avoid speaking because you want to avoid mistakes, you are also avoiding improvement. You are staying in the same place. Think of a child learning to speak. A child does not wait to be perfect. A child speaks with mistakes, incorrect grammar, and incomplete sentences. But the child keeps speaking, keeps trying, and over time, the language becomes natural. You learned your first language this way. You did not study grammar rules before speaking. You spoke first, and accuracy came later. You are trying to reverse this process. You are trying to be accurate before you are fluent. That is why you are stuck. Fluency comes first, accuracy comes later. You need to allow yourself to speak freely, even if it is not perfect. Over time, your brain will adjust, and your accuracy will improve automatically. There's also a deeper issue here, and that is fear of judgment. You are afraid of how you sound. You are afraid of making mistakes in front of others. You are afraid of being seen as less capable. This fear is not about language. It is about identity. You are protecting your image. But here is the truth you need to accept. Nobody is thinking about you as much as you think they are. People are busy with their own thoughts, their own problems, and their own lives. They are not analyzing your every word. Even if they notice a mistake, they forget it within seconds. It does not matter to them the way it matters to you. When you realize this, you gain freedom. You stop performing, and you start communicating. You stop trying to be perfect, and you start being real. And real communication is always more powerful than perfect communication. You also need to change how you define success in speaking. Right now, you define success as speaking without mistakes. That is the wrong definition. A better definition is this: if the other person understands you, you are successful. That is it. Communication happened. The goal is achieved. Once you shift this definition, your mindset changes completely. You no longer fear mistakes because they are no longer failures. They are just part of the process. You become more relaxed, and when you are relaxed, your brain works faster and more efficiently. Another practical thing you can do is reduce the complexity of your language intentionally. Do not try to use advanced vocabulary if you are not comfortable with it. Use the words you know well. Build sentences you can control. This reduces cognitive load and allows you to speak more smoothly. For example, instead of saying, "I was extremely exhausted due to the overwhelming workload I encountered today," you can say, "I am very tired. I had a lot of work today." Both sentences communicate the same idea. The second one is simpler, easier, and more natural for daily conversation. You are not writing an academic essay. You are having a conversation. Conversations are meant to be simple, fast, and natural. The more you align your speaking with this reality, the easier it becomes. There is also a physical side to this. When you try to be perfect, your body becomes tense. Your breathing changes, your voice becomes tight, and your speech becomes unnatural. When you let go of perfection, your body relaxes, your breathing becomes normal, and your voice flows more easily. Speaking is not just mental, it is physical too. You need to train yourself to accept imperfection as normal. This is not a one-time decision. It is a habit you build over time. Every time you speak, remind yourself that it is okay to make mistakes. Every time you feel pressure, bring your focus back to the message, not the form. Start small. Speak in simple sentences. Respond quickly. Do not pause for too long to think. Allow yourself to make errors. Over time, you will notice that your confidence increases. You will feel more comfortable in conversations. And slowly, your English will start to flow naturally. The goal is not to eliminate mistakes. The goal is to reduce fear. When fear disappears, fluency appears. It is that simple. So from today, stop trying to sound perfect. Stop waiting for the right words. Stop building the perfect sentence in your head. Speak with what you have. Use what you know. Trust the process. Say simple things. Say clear things. Say real things. That is more than enough. Chapter 2. Think less. Respond more. Overthinking is the silent killer of your speaking ability, and if you do not fix this, nothing else will matter. You can learn grammar. You can memorize vocabulary. You can watch hundreds of videos. But if you keep overthinking in real conversations, you will still freeze. The problem is not your knowledge. The problem is your delay. Every conversation in real life moves fast. People do not wait for you to build the perfect sentence. They speak, they expect a response, and the moment passes quickly. But your brain is not trained for speed. It is trained for accuracy. It wants to check everything before you speak, and that checking process takes time. By the time you're ready, the conversation has already moved on. You need to understand this clearly. Conversation is not a test. It is not an exam where you get time to think, write, correct, and then answer. Conversation is real-time interaction. It rewards speed and presence, not perfection and analysis. If you try to treat it like a test, you will always feel pressure, and you will always be behind. Right now, your brain is doing too many things at once. When someone speaks to you, you are not just listening. You are translating, analyzing grammar, searching for vocabulary, building a sentence, checking if it sounds natural, and then deciding whether to say it or not. This is too much. No brain can handle all of this instantly, especially under pressure. This is why you freeze. The solution is simple, but not easy. You need to reduce thinking and increase responding. You need to trust simple language and allow yourself to react naturally instead of constructing perfect answers. Let's break this down in a very practical way. When someone says something simple like, "It's really cold today," your brain should not start searching for advanced vocabulary or complex ideas. You do not need to say something impressive. You just need to respond. You can say, "Yes, it's very cold," or "I don't like this weather," or "I feel lazy in this cold." That is enough to keep the conversation alive. But what do you usually do? You pause. You think. You try to find a better sentence. You try to sound more natural or more advanced. And in that process, you lose the moment. This is the habit you need to break. Speed matters more than complexity. A simple response given quickly is far more powerful than a perfect response given too late. Conversation is like a rhythm. If you break the rhythm, everything feels awkward. If you stay in the rhythm, even simple words feel natural. You need to train your brain to accept this truth. Your first response does not need to be perfect. It just needs to exist. Once you say something, the pressure reduces. Then you can add more if you want. But if you say nothing, the pressure increases, and your mind becomes even more blocked. Another important shift you need to make is this. Stop trying to create the best answer. Start giving the first answer that comes to your mind in simple English. This is how native speakers operate. They do not search for the best sentence. They just speak what comes naturally, and then they adjust if needed. For example, if someone asks you, "What did you do yesterday?" Do not try to organize your entire day into a perfect explanation. Just start speaking. Say, "Yesterday was busy. I woke up late. Then I went to work. I had a lot of tasks." This is natural. This is how real people talk. Your brain needs movement. When you stay silent, your brain becomes more tense. When you start speaking, even if it is simple, your brain relaxes and starts working with you instead of against you. There is also a psychological barrier here that you need to understand. You believe that if you say something simple, it is not good enough. You think you should say more or say it better. This belief is wrong. In daily conversations, simple responses are normal. People are not expecting long explanations all the time. They're expecting engagement. If someone asks, "Are you tired?" you do not need to explain your entire day. You can simply say, "Yes, I'm tired," or "A little bit, I didn't sleep well." That is natural. That is enough. The moment you accept that simple responses are valid, your speed increases automatically. You stop searching for complex structures, and you start using the language you already have. This is where fluency begins. Another powerful thing you can do is train yourself with fast response practice. This means you listen to a question or a statement, and you force yourself to respond within 2 or 3 seconds. Do not allow your brain to overthink. Even if your answer is basic, say it. This builds a new habit in your mind. For example, ask yourself simple questions out loud. "How do I feel today?" And answer immediately, "I feel okay, a bit tired." Do not wait. Do not think too much. Just respond. The goal is not accuracy. The goal is speed and comfort. At first, this will feel uncomfortable. Your brain will resist. It will tell you to slow down, to think more, to correct yourself. But you need to ignore that voice. That voice is the reason you are stuck. You are retraining your brain to operate differently. Over time, something interesting will happen. Your responses will become faster, and your accuracy will also improve naturally. This is because your brain is no longer overloaded. It has space to process language more efficiently. You also need to understand that not every response needs to be original. You can reuse patterns. You can repeat structures. In daily conversations, people use the same types of responses again and again. That sounds good. I understand. That's interesting. I feel the same. These are simple patterns that keep conversations moving. If you have a few of these patterns ready in your mind, you do not need to think every time. You can respond quickly and then add more if you want. This reduces pressure and increases confidence. Another mistake you are making is waiting until you fully understand everything before you respond. In real conversations, you do not need to understand every word. You just need to catch the main idea. If you understand the general meaning, you can respond. Waiting for full clarity slows you down and increases your anxiety. For example, if someone is talking about their day and you catch that they were busy, you can respond to that idea. You can say, "Sounds like a busy day," or "That must be tiring." You do not need to understand every detail to participate. This is how natural conversation works. It is not perfect. It is flexible. You also need to stop being afraid of saying something wrong. Yes, sometimes your response might not be perfect. Sometimes you might use the wrong word or the wrong tense. That is normal. The conversation will not collapse because of one mistake. Most of the time, people will still understand you. And even if they do not, you can correct yourself. You can say, "Sorry, I mean," and continue. This is normal behavior in conversation. It is not a failure. It is part of communication. The real failure is silence. The real problem is when you say nothing because you're waiting to be perfect. That is what you need to eliminate. You also need to shift your focus from yourself to the conversation. Right now, you are too focused on how you sound, how correct you are, and how you are being perceived. This self-focus increases pressure. Instead, focus on the other person. Focus on what they are saying. Focus on the flow of the conversation. When your attention is on the conversation, your responses become more natural. When your attention is on yourself, your responses become blocked. This is a simple shift, but it has a powerful effect. In the end, fluency is not about how much you know. It is about how quickly and comfortably you can use what you know. You already have enough English to handle basic conversations. The problem is not knowledge, it is hesitation. So from now on, make a clear decision. You will respond more and you will think less. You will trust simple language. You will accept imperfect answers. You will prioritize speed over perfection. Every time you are in a conversation, remind yourself of this rule. Do not wait. Do not build. Do not overanalyze. Just respond. Because the moment you start responding naturally, your fear will start to disappear, your confidence will start to grow, and your English will finally begin to flow the way it was always meant to. Chapter 3. Use small sentences, not big ideas. One of the biggest reasons you struggle to speak smoothly is not because you do not know English, but because you are trying to carry too much in one sentence. You are trying to express a complete idea with full detail, perfect structure, and correct grammar, all in one breath. That is too much pressure for your brain, especially in real-time conversation. You are building big sentences in your mind before you speak, and that is exactly where you get stuck. Your brain starts organizing the sentence, choosing the right tense, thinking about connectors, and trying to sound natural at the same time. This process is slow, heavy, and stressful. While you are doing all of this, the conversation is moving forward without you. You need to understand something very important. Spoken English is not the same as written English. When you write, you have time. You can think, correct, and restructure your sentence. But when you speak, you do not have that luxury. You need speed, clarity, and flexibility. And the easiest way to achieve that is by using small sentences. Small sentences reduce pressure on your brain. They allow you to speak one idea at a time instead of trying to carry everything together. They give you control. And when you feel in control, your confidence increases. Right now, your habit is to think in big ideas. You want to say everything in one sentence. For example, you might try to say, "Yesterday, I was extremely busy because I had a lot of work to complete, and I also needed to attend multiple meetings which made me feel very tired by the end of the day." This is a heavy sentence. It requires planning, structure, and confidence. Now break this into smaller parts. Yesterday was very busy. I had a lot of work. I also had many meetings. I felt very tired at the end of the day. Notice what changed. The meaning is the same, but the pressure is gone. You did not need to think too much. You just spoke one idea after another. This is how natural conversation works. People do not always speak in long, perfect sentences. They speak in short bursts of ideas. They add more as they go. They adjust their message while speaking. This makes communication flexible and easy. You need to train your brain to think in small units instead of large structures. Instead of asking yourself, "How do I say everything correctly?" Start asking, "What is the first simple thing I can say?" Once you say the first part, the rest becomes easier. Speaking becomes a process, not a performance. There is also a psychological benefit to this. When you try to say everything at once, you create fear. You feel like if you make a mistake, the whole sentence will collapse. But when you use small sentences, each part is independent. Even if you make a mistake in one sentence, you can continue with the next one. The conversation does not stop. This gives you freedom. You also need to realize that listeners do not need long sentences to understand you. In fact, shorter sentences are often easier to understand. They are clearer. They are more direct. They give the listener time to process what you are saying. Communication becomes smoother for both sides. Another important point is that small sentences give you time to think while speaking. When you say one short sentence, you create a natural pause. In that pause, your brain prepares the next idea. This is how fluent speakers manage conversations. They do not think everything in advance. They think while speaking. This is a skill you need to develop. Let's take another example. Imagine someone asks you, "Why do you like your job?" If you try to answer with one big sentence, you might freeze. But if you break it down, it becomes easy. You can say, "I like my job because it is interesting. I learn new things. I also like my team. They're very supportive." Each sentence is simple, but together they form a complete answer. This approach also helps you avoid grammar mistakes. When you build long sentences, the chances of making errors increase because the structure becomes complex. But when you use small sentences, the structure is simple, and you are more likely to be correct. Even if you are not perfect, your message is still clear. You also need to remove the habit of mentally translating full paragraphs before speaking. This is another reason you get stuck. You are trying to convert a complete thought from your native language into English, and that takes time. Instead, translate small ideas one by one. This is faster and more natural. For example, instead of thinking, "I need to explain everything about my weekend," just start with one idea. "My weekend was good." Then continue, "I stayed at home. I watched a movie. I also met a friend." You are building your message step by step. This reduces pressure and increases flow. There is also a rhythm in small sentences that makes your speech sound more natural. Long sentences can feel heavy and unnatural, especially if you are not confident. Short sentences create a natural rhythm. They allow your speech to breathe. They make you sound more relaxed. Another mistake you are making is trying to use advanced vocabulary inside complex sentences. This is a double burden. You are not only managing a long structure, but also trying to insert difficult words. This increases the chance of mistakes and increases your anxiety. Instead, keep both your structure and your vocabulary simple. Use words you are comfortable with. Use sentences you can control. This does not make you sound weak. It makes you sound clear and confident. Clarity is more important than complexity. You also need to practice this actively. This is not something that will change automatically. You need to train your brain to break ideas into smaller parts. One way to do this is by speaking out loud and forcing yourself to use short sentences. For example, describe your day using only simple sentences. I woke up early. I felt tired. I had breakfast. I went to work. The day was busy. Do not try to connect everything into one long sentence. Keep it simple. This trains your brain to think in smaller units. Another exercise is to listen to questions and answer them in 3 or 4 short sentences instead of one long sentence. This builds the habit of expansion without pressure. You are still expressing a full idea, but you are doing it in a controlled way. Over time, this becomes natural. You will stop trying to build perfect sentences in your head. You will start speaking in a flow of small ideas, and that is when your fluency improves. There is also something important you need to accept. Speaking is not about sounding impressive. It is about being understood. Many learners delay their progress because they are chasing a version of English that sounds advanced or sophisticated. But in daily life, people do not speak like that. They speak simply, directly, and naturally. If you can express your ideas clearly using simple sentences, you are already successful. You do not need complex structures to communicate effectively. You also need to let go of the fear of repetition. When you use small sentences, you might repeat words or structures. That is normal. In real conversations, repetition happens all the time. It is part of natural speech. It helps with clarity. Do not try to avoid it completely. Another advantage of small sentences is that they allow you to adjust easily. If you realize that you made a mistake or you want to change your idea, you can do it in the next sentence. You do not need to fix everything inside one long structure. This makes your speech more flexible. Flexibility is key in conversation. You need to adapt, respond, and adjust quickly. Small sentences make this possible. Now think about your current habit again. You try to say everything at once, you get stuck, you hesitate, and then you lose confidence. This cycle repeats again and again. The way to break this cycle is simple. Stop trying to say everything at once. Start saying one thing at a time. This is not a downgrade. This is a smarter way of speaking. Fluency is not about how long your sentences are. It is about how smoothly you can express your ideas. And smoothness comes from simplicity. So from now on, give yourself a clear rule. One idea, one sentence. Do not rush to combine everything. Do not try to sound perfect. Build your message step by step. Start small. Stay clear. Keep moving. Because the moment you stop trying to carry everything in one sentence, your mind becomes lighter, your speech becomes faster, and your English starts to flow in a way that finally feels natural. Chapter 4. Master the art of continuing. Most learners believe that speaking English is about answering questions correctly, but that belief is incomplete, and it is quietly holding you back. Answering is only the beginning of a conversation, not the full skill. The real skill, the one that separates someone who sounds natural from someone who sounds stuck, is the ability to continue. If you only answer and stop, the conversation dies. If you answer and continue, the conversation lives. Right now, your pattern is simple. Someone asks you something, you give a short answer, and then you stop. You feel like your job is done because you responded. But in real communication, that is not enough. A conversation is not a question and answer session like an interview. It is a flow. It is a back and forth exchange of ideas, energy, and attention. When you stop after one sentence, you break that flow, and everything becomes awkward. You need to understand this clearly. Silence after a short answer creates pressure. It puts the responsibility back on the other person to keep the conversation alive. If this happens again and again, the other person will feel tired, and the conversation will slowly collapse. This is why many learners feel like conversations do not last long. It is not because their English is weak. It is because they are not continuing. Continuing does not mean speaking a lot. It means adding just a little more than what is expected. It means giving the conversation something to hold on to. It means offering more than a basic answer so that the other person has something to respond to. Let's look at a simple example. Someone asks you, "What did you do today?" If you say, "I went to work," and stop, the conversation becomes flat. There is nothing to build on. But if you say, "I went to work. It was a busy day. I had a lot of tasks. I feel a bit tired now," suddenly the conversation has depth. Now the other person can respond in many ways. They can ask about your work, your tasks, or your day. You have created multiple paths for the conversation to continue. This is the difference between answering and continuing. Answering closes the moment. Continuing opens it. You need to train yourself to always go one step further. After every answer, ask yourself, what is one more simple thing I can add? It does not need to be complex. It does not need to be perfect. It just needs to extend the conversation. This is where most learners struggle because they are still thinking about correctness. They are still trying to build perfect sentences, and that slows them down. But continuing is not about perfection. It is about movement. You are not trying to deliver a speech. You are simply adding small pieces to keep the flow alive. Another important thing you need to understand is that continuing reduces pressure. This might sound surprising, but it is true. When you give only short answers, every new question feels like a new challenge. You feel like you are constantly being tested. But when you continue, you take control of the conversation. You are not just reacting, you are participating. Participation creates confidence. The more you participate, the more comfortable you feel. And the more comfortable you feel, the easier it becomes to speak. You also need to change how you see silence. Right now, silence feels uncomfortable because you do not know what to say next. But when you learn to continue, silence becomes less frequent because you are actively keeping the conversation alive. You are not waiting for the next question, you are creating the next moment. There is a simple structure you can follow to make this easier. Think of your response in 3 parts. First, answer the question. Second, add a detail. Third, add a feeling or a small opinion. This creates a natural flow without making things complicated. For example, if someone asks, "Do you like your city?" you can say, "Yes, I like my city. It has many good places to visit. I especially enjoy the food here." This is simple, but it is complete. It gives information, and it invites further conversation. You do not need to memorize this structure. You just need to practice the habit of adding more. Over time, it becomes automatic. Another powerful way to continue is by sharing small personal experiences. People connect with stories, even simple ones. You do not need long stories. Just a small detail from your life can make the conversation more engaging. For example, if someone says, "It's very hot these days," you can say, "Yes, it's very hot. I can't even go outside in the afternoon. Yesterday I tried, and I felt so tired." This is still simple, but now it feels real. It creates connection. Connection is the goal of conversation, not perfection. You also need to understand that continuing is not only about speaking more, it is also about inviting the other person to speak. You can do this by asking simple follow-up questions. This keeps the conversation balanced. It becomes a shared experience, not a one-sided effort. For example, after you say something, you can ask, "What about you?" Or, "How was your day?" Or, "Do you like this weather?" These are simple questions, but they keep the conversation moving. They show interest, and they create a natural rhythm. Many learners avoid asking questions because they are focused on their own speaking. They are worried about making mistakes, so they do not think about engaging the other person. But asking questions actually reduces your pressure. It gives you time to think, and it shifts the focus away from you. You also need to stop believing that you need new ideas all the time. This is another hidden pressure. You think you must always say something interesting or unique. That is not true. In daily conversations, people repeat ideas. They agree, they react, and they share simple thoughts. That is normal. You can continue a conversation by agreeing with someone and adding a small detail. You can say, "Yes, I feel the same. I also find it difficult sometimes," or "That's true. I had a similar experience last week." These are simple ways to stay engaged without overthinking. Another important point is that continuing helps your brain stay active. When you speak more, your brain stays in English mode. It becomes easier to think, respond, and express. But when you speak very little, your brain keeps switching back and forth between languages, and this creates more difficulty. Consistency in speaking creates momentum, and momentum is what builds fluency. You also need to accept that not every continuation will be perfect. Sometimes you might repeat yourself. Sometimes your sentences might be simple. Sometimes you might not find the exact word you want. That is okay. The goal is to keep the flow, not to impress. If you wait for the perfect continuation, you will stop again. And stopping is the habit you are trying to break. There is also a deeper shift happening here. When you learn to continue, you stop seeing yourself as someone who is struggling to speak. You start seeing yourself as someone who can hold a conversation. This identity change is powerful. It changes your behavior, your confidence, and your energy. You move from fear to participation. You move from silence to expression. You move from overthinking to flow. This is not something that happens overnight. You need to practice it intentionally. In every conversation, push yourself to add one more sentence, then another, then another. Do not stop at the first answer. Train yourself to go further. You can also practice this alone. Ask yourself questions and answer them in multiple sentences. Do not stop after one line. Force yourself to continue. This builds the habit in a safe environment, so you can use it in real conversations. Over time, this becomes natural. You will no longer think about continuing. You will just do it. Your conversations will feel smoother, longer, and more engaging. People will respond to you more, and you will feel more confident. This is the skill that transforms your speaking. Not perfect grammar, not advanced vocabulary, but the ability to keep a conversation alive. So from now on, stop giving short answers and stopping. Stop closing the conversation after one sentence. Make a clear decision to continue. Add one more idea. Add one more detail. Ask one more question. Keep the flow alive, because the moment you learn how to continue, you stop being someone who struggles to speak, and you become someone who can actually connect, engage, and hold a real conversation with confidence and ease. Chapter 5. Use, repeat, and add method. Most of the time, you think speaking English means creating something completely new every time you open your mouth. You believe you must generate original sentences, new ideas, and perfect responses on the spot. That belief is exhausting, and it is one of the main reasons you freeze in conversations. Your brain is under constant pressure to produce something good, and when it cannot do that fast enough, it shuts down. You are making speaking harder than it needs to be. The truth is much simpler. In real conversations, people do not always create new ideas from nothing. They build on what is already there. They listen. They take a part of what the other person said, and they respond to it. This is natural, efficient, and powerful, and this is exactly what you need to learn. This is called the repeat and add method. You take a small part of what the other person said, you repeat it in your own way, and then you add a simple idea. That is it. You are not starting from zero. You are continuing from what already exists. This reduces pressure on your brain and makes your responses faster and more natural. Right now, when someone speaks to you, you ignore most of what they say and try to build a completely new response. That is where you get stuck. But if you train yourself to use what they said as your starting point, everything becomes easier. Let's break this down clearly. If someone says, "I had a really long day at work," you do not need to think of a completely new topic. You can take a part of their sentence and repeat it. You can say, "A long day at work? That sounds tiring." Then you add something simple, like, "I had a busy day too," or "I usually feel very tired after work." This is a natural response. It shows you are listening, and it keeps the conversation moving. Notice what happened here. You did not create something complex. You did not search for advanced vocabulary. You simply used their words as a base and added your own small idea. This reduces the mental load and allows you to respond faster. This method also gives you time. When you repeat part of what they said, you create a small pause for yourself. During that moment, your brain prepares the next idea. It is like buying time without staying silent. This is a powerful advantage in real conversations. You also need to understand that repetition is not weakness. Many learners think that repeating someone's words makes them sound less intelligent or less fluent. That is completely wrong. In real communication, repetition shows attention and understanding. It makes the conversation feel more connected. Think about how people naturally speak. If someone tells you something surprising, you often repeat it. "You got the job? That's amazing." This is normal. It is not forced. It is how humans react in conversations. The problem is that you have trained yourself to avoid repetition because you think you must always say something new. This belief is unnecessary and harmful. It increases pressure and slows you down. You need to replace that belief with a new one. You are allowed to use what you hear. You are allowed to build from the conversation. You do not need to create everything from scratch. Another important benefit of this method is that it improves your listening skills. When you know you will use what the other person says, you pay more attention. You listen actively instead of passively. You catch keywords, emotions, and ideas. This makes your responses more relevant and more natural. For example, if someone says, "I went to a new restaurant yesterday and the food was amazing," you can respond in many simple ways. You can say, "A new restaurant? That sounds interesting. What kind of food was it?" Or you can say, "The food was amazing? I love trying new places too." You are not inventing something new. You are responding directly to what they said. This creates a smooth flow. The conversation feels connected instead of random. You also need to understand that this method reduces fear. When you know you have a structure to follow, you feel more confident. You are not standing in front of a blank space anymore. You have something to hold on to. That sense of structure gives you control. Control reduces anxiety. And when anxiety goes down, your fluency goes up. Let's go deeper into how you can apply this in different situations. If someone shares a feeling, you repeat the feeling and then add your response. If they say, "I feel very stressed these days," you can say, "You feel stressed? That's tough. I also feel stressed sometimes when I have too much work." This shows empathy and keeps the conversation alive. If someone shares an activity, you repeat the activity and then connect it to your experience. If they say, "I started going to the gym," you can say, "You started going to the gym? That's great. I have been thinking about starting too." This creates connection. If someone shares an opinion, you repeat the idea and then agree or disagree. If they say, "I think mornings are the best time to work," you can say, "Mornings are the best time? I agree. I feel more focused in the morning." Or you can say, "Mornings are the best time? I'm not sure. I work better at night." This keeps the conversation dynamic. You can see a pattern here. You are not struggling to find something to say. You are using what is already in the conversation and building on it. Another powerful aspect of this method is that it makes your speaking sound more natural. Conversations are not random statements. They are connected responses. When you use repeat and add, your speech becomes part of the flow. It feels real, not forced. You also reduce the risk of misunderstanding. When you repeat part of what the other person said, you confirm that you understood them correctly. If there is a mistake, they can correct you. This makes communication clearer and more effective. Now, let's address a common fear. You might think, "What if I repeat something incorrectly?" That is okay. Even if your repetition is not perfect, the intention is clear. The other person will understand what you mean, and if needed, they will adjust. This is normal in conversation. The bigger problem is not incorrect repetition. The bigger problem is silence because you are too afraid to say anything. You also need to practice this method actively. Do not wait for real conversations to try it. You can practice with videos, podcasts, or even your own thoughts. Listen to a sentence, pause, repeat a part of it, and add your response. This builds the habit. For example, listen to someone say, "I enjoy reading books in my free time." Pause and respond. "You enjoy reading books? That's nice. I usually watch videos in my free time." This is simple practice, but it trains your brain to respond quickly and naturally. Over time, this becomes automatic. You will not think about the method. You will just use it. Your responses will become faster, smoother, and more connected. There is also a deeper benefit here. This method shifts your focus from yourself to the other person. Instead of worrying about how you sound, you focus on what they are saying. This reduces self-consciousness and makes you more present in the conversation. Presence is key to fluency. When you are present, you respond naturally. When you are stuck in your head, you freeze. You also start enjoying conversations more. When you are not under pressure to create perfect sentences, you relax. You listen. You respond. You connect. Speaking becomes less of a task and more of an experience. That is the goal. You are not learning English to perform. You are learning English to communicate, to connect, and to express yourself. So stop trying to build everything from nothing. Stop putting unnecessary pressure on your brain. Use what is already in front of you. Repeat what matters. Add what you feel. Keep it simple. Keep it real. Because the moment you start using the repeat and add method, your conversations will stop feeling like a struggle and start feeling like a natural flow, where you are not just speaking English, but actually participating in real, meaningful communication without fear, without delay, and without overthinking. Chapter 6. Stop fearing silence. One of the deepest reasons you struggle to speak is not vocabulary, not grammar, not even confidence. It is your fear of silence. This fear controls your behavior more than you realize. The moment there is even a small pause in a conversation, your mind starts reacting. You feel pressure. You feel exposed. You feel like something is going wrong. And because of that feeling, you panic. That panic is what blocks your speaking. You have trained yourself to believe that silence is a problem. You think that if you pause, people will notice. You think they will judge you. You think they will think you do not know English. This belief is false, but it feels real because you have repeated it so many times in your mind. You need to understand this clearly. Silence is not your enemy. Silence is a natural part of communication. Even in your own language, people pause, they think, they search for words, they take a breath. Conversations are not a continuous stream of perfect sentences. They are full of small pauses, adjustments, and moments of silence. The difference is that in your native language, you do not fear those pauses. You accept them. But in English, you treat silence like danger, and that changes everything. The moment you fear silence, your brain goes into stress mode. It starts rushing. It tries to find words faster than it can. It creates pressure. And under pressure, your thinking becomes slower, not faster. This is why you suddenly go blank. It is not because you do not know what to say. It is because your brain is overloaded with fear. You are trying to escape silence, and in doing so, you create more silence. You need to reverse this completely. You need to become comfortable with pauses. You need to accept that it is okay to stop for a moment. You need to understand that thinking is part of speaking. No one expects you to respond instantly with perfect clarity every time. In fact, small pauses can make you sound more natural and more thoughtful. When you pause, it shows that you are thinking. It shows that you are engaged. It shows that you are not just reacting automatically. Right now, you are trying to eliminate all pauses, and that is unrealistic. Even native speakers do not do that. They pause, they restart sentences, they use filler words, and they take their time. The difference is that they are relaxed during those pauses. Your goal is not to remove silence. Your goal is to remove fear. Let's go deeper into what actually happens in your mind. When someone asks you a question, there is a natural gap between hearing and responding. That gap is where your brain processes information. But instead of allowing that process to happen calmly, you fill that gap with anxiety. You start thinking, I need to answer quickly. I cannot pause. I must sound fluent. These thoughts create tension. Tension blocks clarity. When your mind is tense, your thoughts become disorganized. Words that you know suddenly feel far away. Simple ideas become difficult to express. This is not because your English is weak. It is because your mind is not calm. Calm thinking leads to clear speaking. So how do you build this calm? You start by changing your relationship with silence. Instead of seeing it as a failure, you start seeing it as a tool. Silence gives you space. It gives you time. It allows your brain to catch up with the conversation. You can even use small phrases to manage silence naturally. You can say, "Let me think," or "Give me a second," or "I'm trying to explain this." These are not signs of weakness. These are normal parts of conversation. They show that you are present and engaged. You do not need to hide your thinking process. You can include it in your speech. Another important point is that you need to slow down your expectation of yourself. You expect instant responses because you compare yourself to fluent speakers, but you are still learning. You are still building your flow. It is normal to take a little more time. Speed comes later. Clarity comes first. If you try to force speed before you are comfortable, you create more mistakes and more anxiety. But if you allow yourself to pause and think, your responses become clearer, and over time, your speed will improve naturally. There is also a physical side to this. When you fear silence, your body becomes tense. Your breathing becomes shallow. Your heart rate increases. This physical state affects your thinking. When you are tense, your brain cannot function at its best. So when you feel a pause coming, do something simple. Take a small breath. Relax your shoulders. Give yourself permission to think. This small physical reset can change your mental state. You also need to stop comparing your pauses to your ideal version of speaking. You have an image in your mind of how fluent speakers sound. You think they never pause, never hesitate, never struggle. This image is not real. It is an illusion. If you listen carefully to real conversations, you will notice pauses everywhere. The difference is that fluent speakers are not afraid of them. They own them. They stay calm. You need to develop the same attitude. Another mistake you are making is trying to fill silence with unnecessary words. You start speaking quickly, adding extra words, or repeating yourself just to avoid a pause. This makes your speech messy and less clear. Silence is better than confusion. If you do not know what to say, it is okay to pause and think instead of forcing words. Clear speech is more important than continuous speech. You also need to practice silence intentionally. This might sound strange, but it is powerful. During your practice sessions, allow yourself to pause before answering. Do not rush. Get comfortable with that space. Train your mind to stay calm in that moment. For example, ask yourself a question, wait for 2 seconds, and then answer. Notice how your mind reacts. At first, you will feel uncomfortable, but with repetition, that discomfort will reduce. This is how you build control. Another important shift is to focus on meaning, not speed. When you focus on meaning, you give your brain time to organize your thoughts clearly. When you focus on speed, you create pressure, and pressure leads to mistakes. Let your words come naturally. There is also a deeper truth you need to accept. Silence does not make you look weak. Panic does. When you stay calm during a pause, you look confident. When you rush, stumble, and force words, you look unsure. Confidence is not about speaking nonstop. It is about being comfortable with the flow, including the pauses. You also need to remember that communication is shared. The other person is also responsible for the flow. You are not alone in carrying the conversation. If there is a pause, it is not only your responsibility to fix it, the other person can also speak. This reduces your pressure. You do not need to control every moment. Another powerful realization is this. When you accept silence, your mind becomes quieter. When your mind is quieter, your thoughts become clearer. When your thoughts are clearer, your words come more easily. This is the real transformation. You move from panic to calm. You move from pressure to control. You move from silence as fear to silence as space. And once you reach that point, something changes in your speaking. You no longer rush. You no longer freeze. You speak when you are ready. You think while you speak. You stay present. This is what natural communication feels like. So from now on, stop fighting silence. Stop trying to escape it. Stop seeing it as a problem. Allow it. Use it. Trust it. Because the moment you stop fearing silence, you remove one of the biggest blocks in your speaking, and your mind finally gets the space it needs to think clearly, respond naturally, and communicate with a calm confidence that does not come from perfect English, but from a relaxed and controlled mind that is no longer afraid of the pauses that are and always will be a natural part of every real conversation. Chapter 7. Learn daily life topics. One of the biggest reasons you struggle in conversations is not because you cannot speak English, but because you do not know what to talk about. Your mind goes blank, not because your vocabulary is missing, but because your brain is not familiar with common conversation topics. You are trying to speak without having a base, without having prepared your mind for the kind of conversations that happen every day. You are treating English like a subject to study instead of a life to live. Most of your learning has probably been focused on grammar rules, difficult vocabulary, or random sentences that do not connect to your daily experience. You may know advanced words, but when someone asks you a simple question like, "What did you do today?" you struggle. That is not a language problem. That is a familiarity problem. You need to understand this clearly. Most conversations in daily life are not complex. People talk about simple, repeated topics. They talk about their day, their work, their plans, their feelings, their routines, their problems, their interests, and small observations about life. These topics repeat again and again. If you are not comfortable speaking about these topics, you will struggle in almost every conversation, no matter how much English you know. So, instead of chasing advanced English, you need to master basic, real-life topics. Let's go deeper into this. When someone asks you, "How was your day?" this question is not difficult, but your mind treats it like a challenge. You start thinking about grammar, structure, and vocabulary. That is the wrong approach. This question is about your life. You already know the answer. The only thing you need is the ability to express it simply. You can say, "My day was good. I was busy. I had a lot of work. I feel a bit tired now." This is enough. It is clear, natural, and complete. You do not need advanced words to answer a simple question. But the problem is that you have not trained yourself to talk about your own life in English. You know English as a subject, but not as a tool for expression. This is where you need to shift your focus. Start with your daily routine. This is the easiest and most powerful topic because you live it every day. You wake up, you eat, you work, you rest, you interact with people. These are all things you can talk about. Practice describing your routine in simple English. I wake up at this time. I have breakfast. I go to work. My day is usually busy. In the evening, I relax. This may sound basic, but this is exactly how real conversations begin. Then move to your feelings. People often talk about how they feel. I feel tired today. I feel stressed. I feel happy. I feel relaxed. These are simple expressions, but they are very common in conversations. If you can express your feelings clearly, you can connect with people, and connection is the purpose of conversation. Next, think about your plans. People often ask, "What are you going to do later?" Or, "What are your plans for the weekend?" You need to be ready for these questions. You can say, "I'm going to stay at home. I might meet a friend. I want to rest. I'm planning to go out." Again, simple, clear, and natural. You do not need complicated sentences. You need familiarity. Another common topic is work or studies. People talk about what they do, how their day was, what challenges they faced. You should be able to say, "My work is busy. I had many tasks today. I had a meeting. I learned something new." These are basic expressions, but they are used every day. Food is another simple topic. People talk about what they ate, what they like, what they do not like. "I had rice today. I like spicy food. I don't eat much outside. This food is really good." These are easy sentences, but they keep conversations alive. Weather is one of the most common small talk topics in the world. People talk about heat, cold, rain, and changes in weather. "It's very hot today. I don't like this weather. It might rain later. The weather is nice today." These are simple, but they are used everywhere. You need to realize something important here. Fluency is not about knowing difficult topics. It is about being comfortable with simple topics. If you can talk easily about everyday life, you can handle most conversations. Right now, your brain is not trained for this. It is trained to search for complex ideas or perfect sentences. That is why you freeze. But if you build familiarity with daily topics, your brain will respond faster because it already knows what to say. This is how fluency develops, through repetition and familiarity. You also need to create patterns for these topics. For example, when talking about your day, you can follow a simple pattern. Start with a general statement, then add a detail, then add a feeling. "My day was busy. I had a lot of work. I feel tired now." This pattern works in many situations. When talking about plans, you can say, "I'm going to do this. I think it will be like this. I feel this way about it." These simple structures help you speak without thinking too much. The more you repeat these patterns, the more natural they become. Another important thing is that you need to personalize your English. Do not try to speak like a textbook. Speak like yourself. Use your real experiences, your real thoughts, your real feelings. This makes your speaking more natural and more meaningful. If you try to use sentences that do not belong to your life, you will struggle. But if you use your own life as the base, speaking becomes easier. You also need to practice these topics regularly. Do not wait for real conversations. Practice alone. Talk about your day out loud. Describe what you are doing. Express your thoughts in simple English. For example, if you are sitting alone, you can say, "I am sitting here. I feel a bit tired. I have work to do later. I'm thinking about what to eat." This may feel strange at first, but it is powerful practice. You are training your brain to use English in real situations. Over time, your brain will start to respond automatically. When someone asks you about your day, you will not freeze. You will already have the language ready because you have practiced it many times. Another mistake you are making is underestimating simple topics. You think they are too basic, too easy, not important. But in reality, these are the topics that build your foundation. Without this foundation, you cannot handle more complex conversations. You need to respect the basics. There is also a deeper benefit to this approach. When you become comfortable with daily topics, your confidence increases. You feel like you can handle conversations. You are no longer afraid of simple questions. This confidence spreads to other areas of your speaking. Confidence is built through small wins. Every time you successfully talk about your day, your plans, or your feelings, you are reinforcing your ability to communicate. This creates a positive cycle. You speak more. You feel better. You improve faster. You also need to stop comparing your English to others. Some people may use advanced words or complex sentences, but that does not mean they are better communicators. A good communicator is someone who can express ideas clearly and connect with others. Simplicity often does that better than complexity. Focus on clarity, not comparison. Another important shift is to listen to how people actually talk. Watch simple conversations. Listen to podcasts or videos where people speak naturally. you will notice that most of their language is simple. They are not using advanced grammar all the time. They are using familiar patterns and everyday vocabulary. This should give you confidence. You do not need to reach an unrealistic level to start speaking. You already have enough to begin. You just need to use it correctly. So from now on, stop chasing difficult English. Stop focusing on things that are not part of your daily life. Bring your attention back to what you live every day, your routine, your thoughts, your feelings, your plans, your experiences. Make these your topics. Practice them again and again. Build familiarity. Build comfort. Build flow. Because the moment your brain becomes familiar with daily life topics, your speaking stops feeling like a struggle and starts feeling like a natural extension of your life, where you are no longer searching for words in panic, but simply expressing what you already know in a calm, clear, and confident way that makes real conversations finally feel easy and real. Chapter 8. Train your brain to think in English. The real reason you feel slow, blocked, and disconnected when speaking English is not because you lack knowledge. It is because your brain is operating in the wrong system. Right now, your mind is not thinking in English. It is translating. And translation is the biggest hidden barrier to fluency. Every time someone speaks to you in English, your brain does not stay in English. It immediately switches to your native language. It tries to understand the sentence, then convert your response back into English. This process is slow, heavy, and unnatural. It creates a delay between understanding and speaking, and that delay is exactly where you freeze. You need to understand this clearly. Fluency and translation cannot exist together at the same speed. Translation will always slow you down. It will always create hesitation. It will always add pressure. Because you are doing double work. You are not just speaking. You are converting. Imagine trying to run while carrying extra weight on your back. You can move, but you will never move freely. That is exactly what translation is doing to your speaking. It is adding unnecessary weight to your thinking process. Your goal is simple. You need to remove translation and train your brain to stay in English. Now, this does not mean you need to think in perfect English sentences immediately. That is unrealistic. Your brain is not ready for that yet. Thinking in English starts small. It starts with simple ideas, simple words, and simple awareness. Right now, your thinking is automatic in your native language. You do not even notice it, but when it comes to English, you treat it like a task. You switch into English mode only when needed, and even then, you rely on translation. You need to change this habit. You need to start living small parts of your thinking in English every day. Let's break this down in a practical way. When you are alone, your mind is constantly talking. It is thinking about what you are doing, what you need to do, how you feel, and what is happening around you. This is your internal voice. Right now, that voice is in your native language. You need to slowly shift that voice into English. Start with simple observations. Do not try to think complex thoughts. Just describe what is happening around you in basic English. If you are sitting, say in your mind, I am sitting. If you are tired, say, I feel tired. If you are hungry, say, I need to eat. These are small steps, but they are powerful. You are teaching your brain that English is not just something you study. It is something you use. At first, this will feel unnatural. Your brain will resist. It will want to go back to your native language because that is where it is comfortable. But you need to stay consistent. You are building a new habit, and habits take time. Another important thing is that you should not worry about grammar when you are thinking in English. This is not a test. This is training. If your thoughts are simple and not perfectly structured, it does not matter. The goal is to stay in English, not to be correct. For example, instead of thinking, I'm feeling extremely tired because I did not sleep properly, you can think, very tired, no sleep, need rest. This is enough. It is simple, fast, and effective. Your brain understands meaning before it understands structure. You also need to reduce your dependency on your native language. Right now, you trust your native language more than English. You feel safe there. But as long as you keep going back to it for every thought, your English will never become natural. You need to give English a chance to become your thinking language, even if it feels uncomfortable at first. Another powerful method is to create small English moments during your day. For example, when you're walking, when you're eating, when you're doing simple tasks, switch your thoughts into English. Do not do this all day, because that will be too much. Start with small periods of time, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Then increase it gradually. During these moments, force yourself to stay in English. If your mind tries to switch back, bring it back gently. Do not get frustrated. This is a process. Over time, these small moments will grow, and your brain will start to adapt. You also need to connect English with real actions. When you do something, describe it in English. If you're cooking, think, I am cutting vegetables. Now I am cooking. It smells good. This creates a direct link between language and experience. This is how children learn language. They connect words with actions, not translations. You are doing the same thing, but consciously. Another important point is that thinking in English improves your speed. When you remove translation, your response time becomes faster because you are no longer switching between two systems. You hear English, you process in English, and you respond in English. This is the natural flow. Right now, your flow is broken because of translation. You also need to accept that at the beginning, your thoughts in English will be very simple. You might feel like your English is limited. That is normal. Do not try to jump to advanced thinking immediately. Build slowly. Simple thoughts, clear ideas, basic expressions. This is your foundation. As your comfort grows, your thoughts will become more detailed. You will naturally start forming longer sentences, but this happens over time, not instantly. Another mistake you are making is trying to translate full sentences before speaking. This is too heavy. Instead, train yourself to think in small chunks, one idea at a time. For example, instead of thinking, I need to explain everything about my day, think in parts. Busy day, many tasks, feeling tired. Then when you speak, you can expand these ideas into sentences. This makes speaking easier because your brain is not overloaded. You also need to use repetition to strengthen this habit. The more you think in English, the more natural it becomes. At first, it will feel forced. Then, it will feel familiar. And eventually, it will feel automatic. This is how habits are built. Another powerful exercise is to talk to yourself in English out loud. This is the bridge between thinking and speaking. When you speak your thoughts, you reinforce the connection between your mind and your voice. For example, you can say, Today was a good day. I did my work. I feel a bit tired, but it's okay. This is simple, but it trains your brain to stay in English. You also need to stop being afraid of thinking incorrectly. There is no penalty for mistakes in your thoughts. No one is listening. This is your safe space. Use it to experiment, to practice, and to grow. Your thoughts do not need to be perfect. They need to exist. There is also a deeper shift happening here. When you start thinking in English, your identity changes. You stop seeing English as something external. It becomes part of you. It becomes a tool you can use anytime, anywhere. This is when fluency begins to feel real. You are no longer translating. You are no longer switching. You are simply thinking and speaking, and that is the ultimate goal. But you need to be patient. This is not a quick fix. This is a process of rewiring your brain. It takes time, consistency, and effort, but the results are powerful. you will notice that your responses become faster. Your confidence increases. Your mind feels lighter. Your speaking becomes smoother. Because now, you're not carrying the weight of translation anymore. You are free. So from now on, stop depending on your native language for every thought. Stop translating everything in your head. Start building your thinking directly in English. Start small. Stay consistent. Trust the process. Because the moment your brain starts thinking in English, your speaking stops feeling like a struggle and starts becoming a natural extension of your thoughts, where words come faster, ideas flow easier, and conversations no longer feel like a challenge you have to survive, but a simple, natural process you can finally handle with clarity, confidence, and control. Chapter 9. Practice out loud, not in your head. One of the biggest illusions you are living in right now is this belief that thinking about English is the same as practicing English. It is not. You can understand everything. You can recognize vocabulary. You can even build sentences in your mind. But the moment you open your mouth, everything collapses. That is not a mystery. That is the direct result of practicing silently instead of physically. You are training your brain, but you are not training your mouth. Speaking is a physical skill, not just a mental one. Your brain might know what to say, but your mouth is not used to producing those sounds, those patterns, those movements. When you do not practice out loud, there is a disconnect between your thinking and your speaking. And in real conversations, that disconnect becomes very clear. This is why you feel confident in your head, but blocked in real life. Inside your mind, everything is perfect. You have time, you can adjust sentences, you can imagine yourself speaking fluently. But real conversations do not work like that. There is no pause button. There is no editing. You need to respond in real time, and your mouth needs to cooperate instantly. If your mouth is not trained, your fluency will never appear, no matter how much you understand. You need to accept this truth without excuses. Silent practice is not enough. It gives you knowledge, but it does not give you ability. Ability comes from repetition, from physical use, from actually speaking the language out loud again and again. Right now, you are avoiding this. Maybe because it feels uncomfortable. Maybe because you feel shy. Maybe because you do not want to hear your own mistakes. But avoiding this is exactly why you are stuck. You cannot become fluent in a language you do not physically speak. You need to start using your voice every single day. This does not mean you need a partner all the time. You do not need a classroom. You do not need a perfect environment. You can practice alone, but you must practice out loud. Your voice needs to become familiar with English. Start with something simple. Talk about your day. Say it out loud. Today I woke up late. I felt tired. I had breakfast. Then I started working. My day was busy. This is basic, but it is powerful. You are not just thinking. You are speaking. You are activating your muscles, your pronunciation, your rhythm. At first, this will feel strange. You might feel awkward. You might feel like you are doing something unnatural. That is normal. Your brain is not used to hearing your own voice in English. But this discomfort is part of the process. If you avoid it, you stay the same. You need to push through it. Another important thing is that speaking out loud reveals your real level. In your head, everything feels easy. But when you speak, you notice where you struggle. You notice where you pause, where you repeat, where you cannot find words. This is valuable information. It shows you exactly what you need to improve. If you only practice in your head, you hide these weaknesses. You create a false sense of confidence. And then in real conversations, that confidence disappears. You need real feedback, even if it comes from yourself. Speaking out loud also builds speed. When you speak, your brain learns to process language faster because it has to coordinate with your voice. This creates a connection between thinking and speaking. Over time, this connection becomes stronger, and your responses become quicker. Speed is not something you learn from books, it is something you build through practice. You also need to understand that fluency is not about saying perfect sentences, it is about maintaining flow. And flow comes from continuity. When you speak out loud regularly, you train yourself to keep going, even if your sentences are not perfect. For example, if you are speaking and you forget a word, do not stop. Continue with what you know. Find another way to express the idea. This is real fluency. It is not about knowing everything. It is about using what you have without stopping. This ability only develops when you practice out loud. Another mistake you are making is waiting for motivation. You think you will start speaking when you feel ready, confident, or inspired. That will not happen. Confidence comes after action, not before. You need to speak even when you do not feel like it. Discipline builds fluency, not motivation. Set a simple rule. Every day, you will speak out loud for a few minutes. No excuses. It does not need to be perfect. It does not need to be long. It just needs to happen. Consistency is more important than intensity. You can also use structured practice. Ask yourself questions and answer them out loud. How do I feel today? What did I do yesterday? What are my plans? Answer immediately. Do not think too much. This builds your responsibility. Another powerful technique is shadowing. Listen to a sentence and repeat it out loud. Match the rhythm, the tone, the pronunciation. This trains your mouth to move naturally in English. It improves your flow and your confidence. But do not just repeat. Also, create your own sentences. Both are important. You also need to record yourself sometimes. This might feel uncomfortable, but it is extremely useful. When you listen to your own voice, you become aware of your speaking patterns. You notice your mistakes, your pauses, your strengths. This awareness helps you improve faster. Do not avoid your voice. Use it as a tool. Another important point is that speaking out loud builds memory. When you say something, it stays in your mind longer. Your brain remembers patterns, structures, and expressions more effectively. This is because you are engaging multiple systems at once: thinking, speaking, hearing. This creates stronger learning. You also need to reduce your fear of sounding wrong. When you practice out loud, you will make mistakes. You will say things incorrectly. That is part of the process. If you try to avoid mistakes, you will avoid practice. And if you avoid practice, you will never improve. Mistakes are not the problem. Silence is. You need to shift your mindset. Every time you speak, you are improving. Even if it feels messy, even if it feels slow, you are moving forward. Progress is not always clean. It is often uncomfortable. But that discomfort is where growth happens. There is also a deeper benefit to speaking out loud. It builds your identity as someone who speaks English. Right now, you see yourself as someone who is learning. But when you start speaking regularly, you begin to see yourself as someone who uses English. This shift is powerful. You are no longer preparing to speak. You are speaking, and that changes everything. You also need to understand that your voice is part of your fluency. Your tone, your rhythm, your confidence, all of this comes from practice. If you do not use your voice, these elements remain weak. Fluency is not just about words. It is about delivery. And delivery can only be trained out loud. So stop practicing only in your head. Stop relying on silent understanding. Stop waiting for the perfect moment. Use your voice. Speak every day, even if it is simple, even if it is slow, even if it is not perfect. Because the moment you start practicing out loud consistently, the gap between your thinking and your speaking begins to close. Your confidence starts to build, your speed starts to increase, and your English finally moves from being something you understand in silence to something you can actually use in real life with clarity, flow, and control. Chapter 10. Focus on connection, not performance. This is the shift that changes everything. And if you do not understand this deeply, you will keep struggling no matter how much you practice. Right now, every time you speak English, you are not having a conversation. You are performing. You are trying to sound good, trying to avoid mistakes, trying to protect your image, and trying to prove something. And the moment you enter performance mode, pressure begins. Performance creates fear. Fear creates hesitation. Hesitation destroys fluency. You need to break this cycle completely. Speaking is not a performance. It is a connection between two people. It is not about how impressive you sound. It is about whether the other person understands you and whether you understand them. That is the real purpose of communication, and you have been ignoring it. You are too focused on yourself. You are thinking about your grammar, your pronunciation, your mistakes, your image, and how you are being judged. This self-focus is the root of your anxiety. The more you think about yourself, the less present you are in the conversation. And when you are not present, you cannot respond naturally. You need to shift your attention outward. Focus on the other person. Focus on what they are saying. Focus on the meaning. Focus on the exchange. The moment your attention moves away from yourself, your pressure drops. You stop analyzing every word. You stop trying to control everything. You start listening more. And when you listen more, your responses become more natural. Connection requires presence. And presence cannot exist when your mind is busy judging yourself. Let's be honest about something. You are afraid of being judged. You are afraid that if you make a mistake, people will think less of you. This fear is not about language. It is about identity. You are protecting how you want to be seen. But here is the truth you need to accept. Nobody is as focused on you as you think. People are not sitting there analyzing your grammar or counting your mistakes. They are thinking about their own thoughts, their own responses, their own lives. Even if someone notices a mistake, it does not stay in their mind. It disappears quickly. You are carrying a level of pressure that does not exist in reality. And that pressure is the reason you cannot speak freely. You need to let go of this need to be perfect in front of others. You are not on a stage. You are not being evaluated. You are simply talking. The moment you accept this, your mindset changes. You stop trying to impress, and you start trying to connect. Connection is simple. It is about understanding and being understood. It is about sharing ideas, feelings, and experiences. It is about reacting, asking, and responding. It is human, not technical. When you focus on connection, your language becomes simpler. You stop using words you are not comfortable with. You stop building complex sentences. You start using what you know, and you use it naturally. This is where real fluency begins. Another important shift is to stop trying to control every outcome. Right now, you want every sentence to be correct, every word to be right, every moment to go smoothly. This is unrealistic. Conversations are unpredictable. People interrupt, change topics, misunderstand, and react in unexpected ways. You cannot control all of that, but you do not need to. You only need to stay present and respond. When you focus on connection, you accept imperfection. You accept that sometimes you will struggle. Sometimes you will pause. Sometimes you will say something wrong. But you continue anyway. That continuation is what matters. You also need to understand that people respond to energy more than perfection. If you are engaged, interested, and present, the conversation feels good. Even if your English is not perfect, people enjoy talking to you. But if you are tense, silent, and overthinking, the conversation feels heavy, even if your English is correct. Energy matters more than accuracy. This is something most learners completely ignore. You are trying to fix your language, but you are ignoring your presence. Presence is what makes communication feel natural. Another important point is that connection requires listening. You cannot connect if you are only thinking about what you will say next. When the other person is speaking, your job is not to prepare your response. Your job is to understand them. Listen to their words. Listen to their tone. Listen to their feeling. When you listen properly, your response becomes easier because you are reacting, not creating. Reaction is faster than creation, and that is what you need in real conversations. You also need to allow yourself to be human. You do not need to sound like a perfect English speaker. You can laugh. You can pause. You can say, "I don't know." You can ask for help. You can repeat yourself. This is normal. Trying to sound perfect makes you unnatural. Being real makes you relatable. And relatability is what creates connection. Another deep issue you need to address is your fear of making mistakes in front of others. You need to face this directly. You will make mistakes. There is no way around it. Even advanced speakers make mistakes. The difference is that they do not stop because of them. They continue. They adjust. They move forward. You need to adopt the same attitude. If you make a mistake, correct it and continue. Do not stop. Do not apologize too much. Do not go silent. Keep the flow. Flow is more important than perfection. You also need to stop measuring your success based on how correct your English was. This is the wrong metric. A better measure is this. Did the conversation continue? Did you express your idea? Did the other person understand you? Did you stay engaged? If the answer is yes, you were successful. This shift in measurement reduces pressure and increases confidence. You also need to understand that connection builds confidence faster than correctness. When you have a good conversation, even with simple English, you feel good. That feeling motivates you to speak more. And the more you speak, the better you become. This is a positive cycle. But if you focus on performance, every conversation becomes stressful. You feel judged, you feel tense, and you avoid speaking. This creates a negative cycle. You need to choose which cycle you want. There is also a deeper identity shift here. Right now, you see yourself as someone who is trying to speak English correctly. But you need to start seeing yourself as someone who communicates with people. This is a different identity. You are not a student during a conversation. You are a participant. You are part of the interaction. And when you see yourself this way, your behavior changes. You stop trying to be perfect. You start trying to engage. You also need to practice this mindset intentionally. In every conversation, remind yourself of one thing. Your goal is to connect, not to perform. Bring your attention back to the other person. Listen, respond, and stay present. At first, you will forget. Your mind will go back to performance mode. That is normal. But every time you notice it, bring it back. This is training. Over time, this becomes natural. You will notice that your fear reduces. Your speaking becomes smoother. Your responses become more natural. Your conversations become more enjoyable. Because now, you are not fighting yourself. You are simply communicating. This is the final shift. This is what turns knowledge into fluency. This is what removes pressure. This is what makes English feel easy. So from now on, stop trying to impress people with your English. Stop trying to sound perfect. Stop treating every conversation like a test. Focus on the person in front of you. Focus on the moment. Focus on the connection. Speak simply. Respond naturally. Stay present. Because the moment you shift from performance to connection, everything changes. Your fear starts to disappear. Your confidence begins to grow. Your mind becomes calmer. Your words come more easily. And your English finally becomes what it was always meant to be. Not a perfect system you have to control, but a simple human tool you can use to connect, express, and communicate with real people in a way that feels natural, effortless, and real. Now step back for a moment and look at what has changed. You did not learn thousands of new words. You did not memorize complex grammar rules. You did not try to become perfect. You simply removed what was blocking you. You stopped chasing perfection. You stopped overthinking every sentence. You stopped trying to say everything at once. You learned how to continue instead of stopping. You used what others say instead of starting from zero. You accepted silence instead of fearing it. You trained your mind to stay in English. You started using your voice, not just your thoughts. And most importantly, you stopped performing and started connecting. This is what real fluency looks like. Not fast, not perfect, not impressive, but natural, calm, clear, and real. Understand this deeply. You were never as far behind as you thought. You were just using the wrong approach. You were trying to control something that only works when you relax into it. English is not something you win. It is something you use. And from this point forward, your job is simple. Speak every day, even if it is short. Use simple sentences, even if they feel basic. Respond quickly, even if it is not perfect. Stay in the conversation, even if you feel uncomfortable. Because every time you do this, you are building something real. Confidence that does not depend on perfection. Fluency that comes from repetition. A voice that finally feels like yours. There will still be moments where you hesitate. There will still be moments where you forget words. That does not mean you are failing. That means you are learning in real time. Do not stop in those moments. Keep going. Keep speaking. Keep showing up. Because fluency is not built in silence. It is built in motion. And the more you move, the more natural it becomes. So the next time you are in a conversation, do not wait for the perfect sentence. Say something simple, then say one more thing, then stay in it. That is how it starts, and that is how it grows. This is your speaking reset. Now go use it.